settled in the UK, their English wasn't fantastic. So apparently when I was diagnosed, they didn't catch what cerebral palsy was. So growing up was a strange scenario in that there had never been disability in my family in any shape or form. So me as a disabled child was an eye-opening experience for everyone. I'm really grateful in that they didn't treat me any different. They just, because they had no comparator from before, I was just to them treated as a non-disabled child. So I got the kick up the backside the same way my siblings did, and anybody else around me did as well. So as you said in the intro, it's what led to my years, in fact nearly 30 years of secret counseling therapy sessions, which I only revealed to my family. Even my wife and children didn't know that I would be disappearing every now and then.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because it was just such a taboo subject that a man did not want to admit that he was in therapy. I'd been going through this for 30 years. But I think it's the best thing that I ever did, because I needed to talk to someone who was non-judgmental, who would just sit there with her pen and paper just scribbling down notes of whatever they were saying. I still don't know to this day what she was writing on her pad, but to me it helped that I had someone independent that I could just offload on and saying, this is what's pissing me off today. One of the reasons my book is called Walk Like a Man, and one of the reasons my book is called Walk Like a Man is because sometimes men are expected to, beat our chests quite confidently about how the world is and our position in the world. And we are just as fragile as women, as any other species. We have our moments where we need to talk, but because of societal expectations, we don't.
There's like a sexist movement coming right now, and it's like anything that you say against women is considered sexist. And I think, yes, there are some things that are sexist, but I feel like as a society, women will come to men for help, Like, but who do men go to for help? Because men can't go to women because they're the one that come to us. Because, like, if we don't have a solution, no one has a solution. So it is really difficult, like, who do men go up for? Men don't even talk to each other about any problems either. It's funny, like, we could hang out for like 10 hours and we could talk none of our problems. We would just talk about sports or like really anything else but like what really bothers us, It's like such a weird phenomenon. But
if I'm honest with you, it wasn't a choice that I would have made myself. I actually went to the GP, to the doctor, and said, I want some antidepressants. And I'm going back to 1993, and at that time the doctor said to me, no, I'm not going to give you any antidepressants. In fact, what I'm going to do is prescribe 6 therapy sessions to you, and if at the end of the 6th therapy session, if the therapist writes back to me and says Ammo needs antidepressants, then I will give them to you. I just reluctantly, and I'll use the word strongly, reluctantly agreed to go on a trial to see what goes on in these places. So I walked in, and within an hour, I walked straight out of that building because I found that the environment to be of disabled people who were just basket weaving, making wooden tables, not playing a constructive role in society, not using their abilities to the best of their abilities, and just basically being pigeonholed, locked away in those 4 walls. So I walked out.
But at the same time, it's almost a positive thing that your parents treated you non-disabled, because I think we developed perks and skill sets that we would have never ever earned if we were in a disabled classroom or anything like that. Because I think a lot of these disabled people are coddled, and they're not. And then the thing is, like, they're coddled to like 18 years old, 20 years old, and then, all the support cuts off, and then now they're like basically kids in the adult world.
Is to remind mum and dad what is going to happen to John or Jane when you are no longer around. And that's a conversation many parents don't want to have. They don't like the
Yeah.
conversation. Statistically, no matter what part of the world you live in, as soon as mum and dad are no longer around, and if they were the primary carers, statistically, that disabled child's life expectancy shortens because they haven't
Hmm.
got the systems in place to give them the ability to live independently.
But I think disabled people work harder than the next person just because we are not given as many chances of, like, let's say at a job. So we work hard
Yeah.
at that job because we don't have really like a backup plan to that. Like that's probably our only job that we were able to get. So like we're gonna work really hard so we can have that job and keep that job. So most likely we're gonna work harder than the next person because we really want to keep that job and we have to prove ourselves. And every single day we're constantly proving ourselves that we deserve to be hired for this job. We deserve a place in this world. Like, yes, we're disabled. Some are more disabled than others, but we deserve a place to be here. We can do as good of a job. We can even do a better job than the next person. Like, we put more our efforts into it. So I think a lot of disabled people are just more dedicated to their craft because they kind of we don't have. But we take every opportunity for granted. I think that's what we have above.
And so I always say to any employee, if you want to get a job done, if you've got a project that needs doing, give it to a disabled person because they're going to work flat out for you. Statistically, disabled people take less time off sick than non-disabled people.
They're also dealing with their own problems and shit too, and like they're not gonna show it, but like it takes more time to like get out of bed and get dressed in the morning. It takes more energy to do. So they're not only are they doing the same work as the next person, but they're also dealing with a lot of other shit that you just don't see directly. So like,
That's it.
so we just put more effort into every single day, and that's what makes us so amazing that we keeping the same high bar that the next person, and some of the time we even surpass the next person, and we're like, and we have the same energy, and we just deal with this shit every single day, and then we keep going. It's amazing to see.
I have a relationship with depression. It's sometimes I win and sometimes depression wins, but never does it beat me to the extent that I don't get back up again. So you have to accept that this is now part of me.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Two Mics, One Joe Stooch. I am Joe Stooch. I'll be giving a mic to Amo. Amo is CEO of the biggest youth-led disability group in the Midlands, called the Disability Direct, made over £25 million. He is also a semi-successful Bhangra singer. He also has a book out called Walk Like a Man. It is an autobiography of a character named AJ and his visit with his therapist over 3 decades. A lot of the stories you've been through. What was it like growing up with cerebral palsy and depression in an Asian household?
What was it like growing up? It was a strange one, Joe, because I didn't realize I had cerebral palsy till I was probably in my early 20s. I just
Oh.
thought I was a bit weak down one side, and my parents being recently having just settled in the UK, their English wasn't fantastic. So when I was
Mm.
diagnosed, they didn't catch what cerebral palsy was. So growing up was a strange scenario in that there had never been disability in my family in any shape or form. So me as a disabled child was an eye-opening experience for everyone. I'm really grateful in that they didn't treat me any different. They just, because they had no comparator from before, I was just to them treated as a non-disabled child. So I got the kick up the backside the same way my siblings did, and anybody else around me did as well. So not, it wasn't overtly different in any way. What what was different was the world outside my family, the way they were treating me, the way they were looking at me, the way they thought I should behave growing up, what they thought my limitations should be, and what my limited expectations should be too. So that was the thing that concerned me most growing up. And it's, as you said in the intro, it's what led to my years, in fact, nearly 30 years of secret counseling therapy sessions, which I only revealed to my family. Even my wife and children didn't know that I would be disappearing every now and then
Really?
for therapy.
Wow. Okay.
Because it was just such a taboo subject that a man did not want to admit that he was in therapy. It's over here in the UK, therapy is still a fairly new thing in terms of openly talking about it. So I only became very vocal about my therapy and my mental health just before lockdown, when the pandemic broke.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even then, Joe, it was mainly because I was about to start my mission writing a book about my life, and I thought, well, I better reveal it to my family before it becomes public knowledge. So when I did eventually tell my family, I think they were in a little bit of shock. I'd been going through this for 30 years, but I think it's the best thing that I ever did because I needed to talk to someone who was non-judgmental, who would just sit there with a pen and paper, just scribbling down notes of whatever they were saying. I still don't know to this day what she was writing on her pad, but to me it helped that I had someone independent that I could just offload on and saying, this is what's pissing me off today, and or this situation is what's annoying me. So yeah, I think it's the best thing that I could do, and I would recommend it to any man, um, particularly one of the reasons my book is called Walk Like a Man, and I'll walk like one of the reasons my book is called Walk Like a Man is
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes men are expected to, you know, beat our chests quite confidently about how the world is and our position in the world, and we are just as fragile as women, as any other species. We have our moments where we need to talk, but because of societal expectations, we don't. And I felt the need to be open with it. Stop me if I'm rabbiting on, but the thing
No,
is,
here, I'll stop. I'll stop you. I'm gonna say it blows my mind that you kept your therapy a secret. Yeah, it's crazy to me that you were in therapy for 30 years, and like I when I was reading about you, it didn't say that you were in secret for 30 years. So like I understood why you like kept your therapy like secret from your parents, but like hard to believe that you kept it a secret from your wife and even kids because like like you're supposed to like share things together and it's crazy that you were just able to keep
well,
it a secret for so long.
yeah, you're right, and it's something that even my wife said to me, why didn't you talk to me? Well, because as you quite rightly pointed out, couples should be able to share everything. But as I said, there's this expectation that I had. I grew up in a
Mhm.
household where the man went out to work and the man was
Mhm.
the head of the household and the final say in matters. I wasn't alone in that. That's something that's quite prominent in South Asian culture. When I became married, we talked about absolutely everything, but this one thing was, the state of my mental health was because I was physically weaker than most men. I didn't
Mhm.
want to come across as mentally weaker too, and
Yeah.
that was something that it was a conscious decision at the time that I thought this has to stay in my own head. These demons that I'm wrestling are my demons. I can't share them. They're mine. And hindsight, maybe I should have opened up to my wife and children. I don't know but I still to this day now, 30 years later, I don't think I would have changed it. I would have probably stayed with the way
Mhm.
it did happen because from where I started as somebody with zero confidence, zero self-belief to the stage now where you can put me in front of any group of people and I can talk for England. I can confidently talk about the subject that concerns me or the subject of the day. So it's not overly a big thing for me anymore. And I put that down to my journey, and this ability to keep things to myself is part of that journey. So might sound a strange thing to say, but I think I am pleased that I kept it to myself.
Yeah, I think it's also a change of times. Mental health has made huge strides in every capacity for the past just 20 years, even 10 years. Like more men are being open about going to therapy, more women are being more open about therapy. Now you can kind of know what's toxic, what's not toxic. But I think what's important about our conversation is us as men talking, because like you mentioned before, that men are the ones that should like take care of everything and like show no emotion, and like any problem that comes along our way, like we just have to handle it. And I do get that. I think a lot of us men are just like, there's like a sexist movement coming right now, and it's like anything that you say against women is considered sexist. And I think yes, there are something that are sexist, but I feel like as a society, women will come to men for help. Like but who do men go to for help? Because men can't go to women because they're the one that come to us. Because like if we don't have a solution, no one has a solution. So it is really difficult. Like who do men do go up for? Men don't even talk to each other about any problems either. It's funny. Like we could hang out for like 10 hours and we could talk none of our problems. We could talk about sports or like really anything else, but like what really bothers us. It's like such a weird phenomenon. But it was good. But like since mental health is a huge deterrent for you, how did you start going to therapy alone? Because you say you were not confident in yourself and stuff. And I feel like you have to have a certain level of confidence to go to therapy, because it kind of admits you are defeated. It admits that you are not mentally well. So like, how did you take the first step to go to therapy? Just not even telling anybody.
Yeah, it's a good question. If I'm honest with you, it wasn't a choice that I would have made myself. I actually went
Okay.
to the GP, to the doctor, and said, I want some antidepressants. And I'm going
Okay.
back to 1990. I'm going back to 1993. And at that time, the GP, the doctor said to me, no, I'm not going to give you any antidepressants. In fact, what I'm going to do is prescribe 6 therapy sessions to you. And if at the end of the 6th therapy session, if the therapist writes back to me and says, Ammo needs antidepressants, then I will give them to you. And at
Okay.
the time, I just thought, oh, gosh, okay, this is something I've got to do. Uh,
Of course,
so
yeah.
I went along. So I went along to the therapist. By the end of the 6th session, she did reluctantly prescribe the antidepressants. But this is no lie, Joe. To this day, I haven't taken a single one. I haven't taken a
Oh,
single
okay.
antidepressant. It was I did go to chemist and get the tablets, but they sat on my shelf for about 3 months. Never touched them, and I still haven't taken any to this day because I found it more beneficial to talk. And you said earlier on, and you're spot on. You hit the nail on the head. Men are terrible at talking to each other. Women, and this isn't. Hopefully, this doesn't sound sexist. Women can comfortably meet each other after a day or after a week or after a month, and the first question is normally, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?"
Yep.
But for some reason, when we get together as males, we seem to feel it's more important to talk about last night's football match or how many beers we drank last night, and that overtakes the conversation which really should be going on. And I say I've alluded to it in the book. Why is it that when 2 men meet or 3 men meet or a number of guys meet in a pub or wherever, why is it that they cannot start the sentence with, guess what's pissing me off? Guess what's annoying me? Why is it that we can't start that? It's still pretty macho to say something's pissing me off. But why do we feel reluctant to do that? And we seem to find it more, uh, you know, more of a testosterone-filled conversation if we're talking about, last night's game or, how bad a hangover we had last week.
Yeah, to add to you, I kind of find men conversation better longer haul, because I feel like when if we're in a bad mental space, sometimes we don't want to talk about the problem. If we talk about something else, sometimes it snaps us out of that bad mindset, and most of the time our problems are trivial or small. It doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things. So I think sometimes men conversation is actually more comforting because I don't really want to talk about my problem because sometimes my problem I want if I talk to you about a problem, it's kind of like I'm coming more of like, hey, I have a problem. Can you help me find a solution? But but there's no solution. There's no point of talking. That's how I see it. So I'd rather talk to you about the game because snatch me out of it, and then maybe I will find a solution in the meantime, or maybe I'll go back to that problem and be like, well, you know what? Maybe it's not as big of a deal as I made it. It's it'll just move on. What? Do you find more comfort talking about your problems, or do you rather have almost a distraction?
I find a lot more comfort talking about it, but I seem to have mastered this ability to talk about my problem and ease my problem into a conversation without be, without feeling defeated, without feeling less
Okay.
macho, less of a male. And I think it's just happened. What I found really strange is sometimes the blokes that are around me, or the men that are around me, I found them starting to do that now, which is really good.
Okay.
And my immediate circle of men that I have around me, or whether they've got beers, we're having a beer, or whether we're just having a coffee together, I've found that the conversation flows a lot easier now because the minute
Mm-hmm.
my immediate circle realise that Ammo has problems and then probably the same kind of problems that I'm having too, it becomes easier to talk about it. And I think all we need is, is for one man to come forward and say, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling. Something is bothering me. Something's on my mind. Before you realize it, the rest of the guys around the table will start revealing something without realizing that they're doing it. They're
Mm-hmm.
actually revealing that's bugging them too. So I think we need more conversations, and they don't. You know, I mean, okay, I have a beer, I'll have a drink as much as the next man, but I don't think alcohol needs to be involved. Sometimes we could just have a chat and have a coffee or get together and without realizing we're talking about our feelings without the need for alcohol. Because sometimes people say, well, if I have a drink, then I'm probably going to open up more. You may end up more, but you're probably more likely to forget the conversation too. So I always say, let's talk and let's just keep talking. And no matter how big or small your problem is, sometimes you'll talk to someone and they may not be able to help you. They may not have the magic answer, the magic wand to your problems. But just by talking to them, you've probably. I find sometimes people are talking to me and halfway through them revealing whatever's on their mind, you can see what's the wheels in their head turning. They've actually come up with the solution to their problem just by talking to you themselves, and you're not doing much to actually help
Yeah.
them. You're just being a sounding board.
Who do you like
That's
talking to more? Do you like talking to women more, or do you like talking to men?
God, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I've never really, but I both. I'd say. Uh, I have an immediate circle. I've got some management that are close to me,
Mm-hmm.
I can offload and talk to them no problem, and vice versa they do too as well. But then my friends as well. Most of my friends are male. In fact, nearly all of my friends are male, so I can
Mm-hmm.
comfortably talk to them. And me and my wife talk a lot more now. Not as much as she'd like, but I still do. I've started talking to, and she knows now to ask me what's going on, what's on your mind. No, really, tell me what's going on. So she really knows how to drill it out of me now. So and my daughters do that as well. So
Yeah. So
all
let's
my
so let's
my family
throw
around
okay.
me
So
are.
let's throw it back a little bit because you say we were so the great topic that we're talking about men, but then you also grew up in an Asian household. So are you more influenced of you being a man that you're more not emotionally available, or is it more that you're in an Asian household where it's more you don't show emotion? Because I interview other people that have Asian households and they grew up to hide they grew up hiding their feelings. So is Asian more of an influence on your personality, or is it you being a man?
bit of both, a little bit of both there. I think growing up in the South Asian background, with a background in that kind of environment, in that household, it it shaped my view of what I should be talking about and what I shouldn't be talking about. I'm the oldest of the three children, and so I'm expected to be set an example to the younger two. So there's a certain way I'm supposed to behave, and being weak is not one of them. That shaped the way I should be. What I've found, with particularly with the South Asian community, is since this book came out, now bear in mind my mental health really started affecting me when I was in my 20s, and now I'm 54 years old. And 30 years later, when my book came out, I get messages on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and by email from young disabled people or young non-disabled people who are in their 20s now, and their consistent message is that what you went through all those years ago, we're still going through that now. Nothing has changed. The mentality of the South Asian elders have not changed, or the way they view disability, the way they view mental health hasn't changed. We are still expected to be silent and we're not expected to have an opinion. Mum and dad know best.
Hmm.
Even when they're in their 30s, mum and dad still know best. They have no opinion of their own. So there's a lot of work to be done in the South Asian community and the wider disabled community too, in terms of how disabled people take control of that conversation about their life, and avoid being pigeonholed by their immediate circle and then the professionals. Because one of the battles I had, which is listed quite strongly in my book, is the expectation of professionals, of what professionals thought I should and shouldn't be doing. If I can give you a quick example. Just before I started at Disability Direct, I was in a deep period of depression, and a social worker felt that it's important that I should be amongst other disabled people. And so she assessed me and placed me in a day service, a day centre for disabled people. And I didn't know what one was. I'd never been to one. I'd never heard of them. And so I just reluctantly, and I'll use the word strongly, reluctantly agreed to go on a trial to see what goes on in these places. So I walked in, and within an hour, I walked straight out of that building, because I found that the environment to be of disabled people who were just basket weaving, making wooden tables, not playing a constructive role in society, not using their abilities to the best of their ability, and just basically being pigeonholed, locked away in those four walls. So I walked out, and for some bizarre reason, and I can't explain it to this day. For some reason, on the way out, I did an impersonation of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I said, "You watch, I'll be back." Um, to cut a long story short, roll the clock forward 15 years. As CEO of Disability Direct, I signed a contract to take over that very day service and become the CEO of that day service.
Wow.
And strangely enough, the manager was still there, who I'd walked out and made that comment to. He didn't recognize me, but eventually, when I did reveal to him that all those years ago, he thought that this is all I was capable of. Strangely enough, he didn't last long. He left the organization. I don't know what his. He decided to take early retirement or something. I don't know. But it just shows this is what professionals can do to the confidence of a disabled person, to affect somebody's life. If you are placing somebody in an environment which doesn't maximize their opportunities, you are basically destroying someone's life. I'm glad I did that, rebellious
Yeah,
thing all those years ago and walked out.
yeah, I'll support your opinion because a lot of disabled people be like you should hang out with other disabled people, and like in theory I get it, but like I feel like a lot of disabled people aren't motivated or some. It's hard to make a broad statement about disabled people because that's such a huge range. And there are some that could be physically disabled but then can be really smart, and then there are some that are physically able but are something wrong with their head. Like there's such a huge range. And I think we can both agree there will be some disabled people that will not be able to live a normal life. They're never able to live on their own and stuff. Like they will need help for the rest of their life. But yeah, it's
Sure.
frustrating that you group so many people together and you're limited by the weakest link in it. So like whoever is like the weakest person, you're stuck to their level and you can't outgrow it. And then but there's no like middle stage. It's either you're with the disabled community or you're with the regular community. There's nothing in between, so like you're stuck in it and it's hard to really grow. So like me growing up, I had a lot of resentment against the disabled community because like yes, I was physically disabled a lot, but like I'm an extremely smart person and I outshine everybody. But since I was physically disabled, they pigeonholed me to that space, and that was really annoying because I would always group with them, and they never thought anything different. So like, I think like you talked earlier, like you're talking about how like traditions and Asian values are really toxic, but at the same time, it's almost a positive thing that your parents treated you non-disabled because I think we developed perks and skill sets that we would have never ever earned if we were in a disabled classroom or anything like that. Because I think a lot of these disabled people are coddled, and they're not. And then the thing is, like they're coddled to like 18 years old, 20 years old, and then all the support cuts off, and then now they're like basically kids in the adult world, and like they can't do anything because like everyone was like catering to them, and then they're just like really stuck to that. So they have guys like you have to create a system to help them out, and that I get why it happened, but kind of like we're screwing them in the long run because like they need help getting a job, how to get a resume, and like how to the housing. Because if you ask a regular person that has no disability, they're doing the exact same steps you're doing. Like they have to go out and find a job and stuff, and they don't have any help. So like sometimes I wonder why do disabled people need help because they kind of have the same perks. Like why should we support disabled people because they could be able to do. Like I do get some have physical disability. I don't need like carers and stuff, but I think sometimes disabled people are too coddled, and I think it hurts them more than helps them. That needs more a reality check for them, like and more accountability to them. Sometimes I think they're living too comfortably, and I experienced that growing up too. And like now I'm 30, I kind of want to be on my own and live more adult life because as nice as it is, I really don't want to anymore. I feel like I want to be a real adult. Like, do you think that disabled people are too coddled growing up? Because that's a remarkable story that you were able to partner with a group that almost stunted your growth. So like, how do you approach from someone that's not being too coddled, but being like, we want to make you into adults where you don't need services anymore?
And I think you're spot on. There are going to be some disabled people that will need, will struggle to get employment. They will
Mm-hmm.
need maximum care. They will need a day service. But one of the first things I did when I took over this day service is said, okay, the day service needs to be for those disabled people who are really at the top level, the higher level of care
Mm-hmm.
needs. That doesn't mean they cannot live independently. That doesn't mean they don't know how to switch on a kettle or put a pizza in a microwave. They need to learn the basic skills. So what we've got going on at this new day service now is the soft skill sets that disabled people need to understand. So that let's rewind. One of the my battles that I have is to remind mum and dad what is going to happen to John or Jane when you are no longer around? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
conversation many parents don't want to have. They don't like the
Yeah.
conversation. Statistically, no matter what part of the world you live in, as soon as mum and dad are no longer around, and if they were the primary carers, statistically, that disabled child's life expectancy shortens because they haven't
Mm-hmm.
got the systems in place to give them the ability to live independently. So my argument is with these kind of day services, which I would now prefer to call life skill centers, these kind of life skill
Mm-hmm.
centers need to have soft outcomes, and the soft outcomes should be around teaching the very basics of personal hygiene, cooking, cleaning, just enough so that if the state steps in and provides you with care, you are still able to function independently. Not to the extent that you are totally reliant on care and cannot manage your own affairs, not because you have a learning difficulty or anything like that, but because no one's invested in you, giving you the opportunity to learn yourself. You are right, some parents do mollycoddle the children, and that's for disabled children and non-disabled children as well, to the extent that they just cannot cope in the real world outside. So what my primary focus is about providing that support in terms of any particular social care need that they may have, but making sure that the disabled person is in control of the conversation and is able to determine what's safe and not safe, what's right and what's not right, and so that they're able to function independently as much as possible. So, yeah, and I think we have come a long way in 30 years since I've been doing it, in that, we have legislation now which gives disabled people more powers, not as good as it should be, but it's a step in that direction. So, in 30 years' time, we may be having a different conversation that the world may be a better place for disabled people. I wouldn't bet on it, but we may be heading in that direction where disabled people are living more equally in society. But that's only going to change if disabled people take control of the conversation.
I mean, I'm gonna have to disagree with you slightly, like saying that
Okay.
disabled people have equal rights. Cause disabled people kind of don't have equal rights. I do understand they do have barriers of entry in terms of like it is harder to get a job. It is harder to be respected more just based on disability. Like that's ableism talking. I do get that, but at the same time, they're not equal righted. They're actually privileged because they do have programs that help them get jobs and help them. I guess you do help them get a job, how to take care of themselves, how to live and stuff. Because if you ask a regular adult, they're not taught to do anything. They kind of like I guess they learn as they grow older and just assume responsibilities. Where disabled people are like helped every single way of like what is good housing, what is good jobs. Like they have like I'm sure you have connections of how to get a job for them that will only hire specifically disabled people. Like equal rights is a disabled person applying for a job that doesn't say we're applying for we need a disabled person to fill a quota. You apply to the same job that everyone else does, and you will get hired for your talent. That's equality, not I only got the
Well,
job because they need to fill a disability quota.
you're right. In the UK, we don't have quotas anymore. Disabled people are applying on an equal basis. But what we're finding is that employers are still preferring non-disabled people over disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
There is still a wage gap between non-disabled people and disabled people. I mean, the only one of the good things that came out of after the pandemic was that when everybody started working from home, logging on
Mm-hmm.
from home, this was something that disabled people were fighting for decades. That, well, okay, if I
Mm-hmm.
can't come to the office, I can log in from home. And employers were traditionally saying, no, no, that can't be done. But when everybody had to log in from home, disabled people just thought, well, hang on, didn't weren't we asking for this for the last 10, 20 years? So that has given disabled people the confidence that I can work from home. But what's still happening on the floor is very different in terms of, the decision. A lot of managing directors and CEOs of company can sit around a board table and say, we do need disabled people to work for us. But by the time that decision has filtered down to middle management and junior management who are there recruiting disabled people, that commitment isn't there. Because often, how many times have you heard or have I heard, the amount of people that say, well, we haven't got any disabled people working for us because most of our customers aren't disabled. And I say, well, imagine if you had disabled people working for you, you may have more disabled customers because the spending power of disabled people is in the billions. And let's be realistic, in a real world of equality, I've always said every company needs to physically look in the mirror or make the workforce. If the workforce does not reflect the community it wishes to serve, then you're missing out on billions in extra revenue, an extra income for your company because you have tunnel vision of who you think your customer base is rather than who it should be or it could be.
I mean, I'll add to the disability argument too. Like, a good part with that. I don't know, like maybe on your experience, but I think disabled people work harder than the next person just because we are not given as many chances of, like, let's say at a job. So we work hard at that job because we don't have really like a backup plan to that. Like that's probably our only job that we were able to get. So like we're gonna work really hard so we can have that job and keep that job. So most likely we're gonna work harder than the next person because we really want to keep that job and we have to prove ourselves. And every single day we're constantly proving ourselves that we deserve to be hired for this job. We deserve a place in this world. Like, yes, we're disabled. Some are more disabled than others, but we deserve a place to be here. We can do as good of a job. We can even do a better job than the next person. Like, we put more our efforts into it. So I think a lot of disabled people are just more dedicated to their craft because we take every opportunity for granted. I think that's what we have above everybody else. They just seem more grateful and they were given an opportunity and they will just run with it. Where the next person be like, I don't want to come to work today, whatever, I'll just find a new one tomorrow. And yeah, they probably will be able to find another job because they have more opportunities. But I think sometimes hiring a disabled person just based on just working their asses off because they really want to be there. And like sometimes we both know that hiring people is really hard to find people. You want to find hardworking, dedicated employees. So sometimes disabled people are a good demographic to cater to and hire.
I couldn't agree more. The reality is that as disabled people, we're always working in overdrive. Whatever we're doing in life, we're always working in overdrive. And so I always say to any employee, if you want to get a job done, if you've got a project that needs doing, give it to a disabled person because they're going to work flat out for you. Statistically, disabled people take less time off sick than non-disabled people. Disabled people will not take a week off work because they've got a cold or a slight sniffly nose.
Yeah, and then to add to that, they're also dealing with their own problems and shit too. And like they're not gonna show it, but like it takes more time to like get out of bed and get dressed in the morning. It takes more energy to do. So they're not only are they doing the same work as the next person, but they're also dealing with a lot of other shit that you just don't see directly. So like
that's it.
So we just put more effort into every single day, and that's what makes us so amazing that we keeping the same high bar that the next person, and some of the time we even surpass the next person, and we're like, and we have the same energy and we just deal with this shit every single day, and then we keep going. It's amazing to see.
And the thing is, there's countless examples of that out there, of disabled people who they nothing seems to, people, my family used to call me Superman because whatever whatever I had, I'd just get up next day and carry on.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply because you're used to it. If you're in pain, like in my discs in my lower back, L1 and L2 have disintegrated almost. But I carry on going for it. I just have pop a couple of painkillers and I'm off. I know other people who have got similar kind of corroded discs in their spinal column, and they don't want to move off the sofa. They just want to stay there all day because they're in agony.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's not how you live. You've got to. It's there. It's part of you. That pain is part of you. And the quicker you learn to live with it, the quicker you can get on to the next thing in your life. And that's something that disabled people, it comes naturally to us, that we just expect. Okay, right. Something's hurting now. All right, bloody hell. What's next? Right. So we just get on with it. And because we have this thing, I come across people who have just been diagnosed with an impairment, and yes, it's affected them. They've started using a walking stick now, or they can't walk as far as they used to, and it's affected them so much. And then they say, "Well, Amma, how do you do it?" I said, "Look, I don't know any other life. I've always struggled to walk long distances. If you can only have that feeling now, that's a new experience for you, and you have to embrace it. Okay, try and fight it, but at some stage you have to, recognize that this is my life now, and you move on with it, and you form a relationship with it." Now, I say this often. I have a relationship with depression. It's sometimes I win and sometimes depression wins, but never does it beat me to the extent that I don't get back up again. So you have to accept that this is now part of me. This is, whether it's a physical disability, whether it's mental, whether it's learning impairment, people form relationships with it, and they're the ones that set examples for the rest of society. The ones that will just give up, it's mainly because they've not had the support in systems in place to get to walk them through something. And I feel for them, I really do, and I'm hoping that more and more disabled people out there. And I say this regularly. I grew up at a time when you didn't see disabled people in the news or on the TV or in the media. We didn't have social media in those days, so I had no role models. But today, disabled people out there, no matter what impairment they've got, if you go on social media, you will find another disabled people with that kind of impairment, and so you can see what people are going through and how they're living their life, and whether they're living it, if they're living it positively, then you can take some comfort and some encouragement from watching them. So I think that's important too. I didn't have that, and a lot of disabled people from my generation, the next one down, didn't have that as they grew up. But today that is out there, so disabled people can, they've got this kind of a template that exists out there, and so that's where social media can have its advantages. It has negative part to play sometimes in society, but I always say it's positive when disabled people can just log on and Google an impairment, and then before you realise it, you've got a long list of people out there who are going through or have gone through what you are going through now.
I'll add to that. I understand inspirational and role model, but I don't think it's really important that people make it seem, because I think at the end of the day, it's really up to you and your motivation and drive to wanting to do something. Seeing another person does help, that it is possible, but I think but at the end of the day, you're the only one that can go. You're the only one that can put one foot in front of the other and go out there and make the change that you want to see in the world. And then the other thing is, you also don't know, there's setbacks too. Most of us just show that when we're winning, but we don't show our losses too. And unfortunately, it really doesn't come down to you, and you have to the first is accepting your disability. once you can get past that, I think that's the hardest step. Then you can kind of push forward a lot. And then two, it's just kind of like, I think of it this way. So let's say I have a goal and it's like, can I do the goal? Yes. And then I think backward, like, what do I need to achieve to get to that goal? Like, is it possible? Yes. Will it take more work? Probably. But if it's done, like, I think what lacking a lot of disabled people is drive and motivation. Sometimes they just don't have those two, and they're not able to do anything, so they like complain about it or don't do anything, and then like they wait for an opportunity that sometimes just will never come. Like sometimes you just have to like create it. So like to use you with that example, like you didn't like the system that was in place now, so like you got into a good place where you started your own company, and now you're making a real change that's really helping disabled people, which is amazing. 25 million pounds, that's so much. Like, there are people that are only living on $900 a month, and you're making 25 million, or the company is.
I'll point out, it's not that I wish it was 25 million all mine, but it isn't. It's basically the turnover, what I've raised through donations, grants, and chargeable trading is actually probably near 28, 29 million now. But it's, but what you've hit on there, Joe, is so important. It's at the end of the day, it's up to a disabled person to make that first move. But sometimes what we need is maybe not just an inspiration, but we just need that little spark. We just need something to happen in front of us. It could be something on the TV, or it could be somebody that we know, or somebody who we know of in our neighborhood that has just done something or is doing something that creates this spark in our head and think, hang on, I can do that, or I need to be involved in that. And it's, there's so much talent out there in disabled people, and it's often it goes down the pan because nobody has given that little spark or provided that opportunity. And that could be said of the wider society too. There's a lot of talent out there per se in general, but for disabled people it's harder because we've always traditionally been put to the back of the queue. We were the ones that were picked last when it came to kids choosing, who's going to play on their soccer teams. And we've always been at the back of the queue, so we lacked confidence. And what we need is other disabled people to say, hang on, I pick you, and because and not just because you're disabled, because there's a fire in you that I just need to harness, and I need to and make that fire burn brighter. When I joined the organization 29 years ago, I honestly was going to walk out on the first day and go home. I said to my wife, I'm not going back there. And she said, why? I said, it's full of disabled people. And she said, well, so are you. You're a disabled person. But my boss at the time, the CEO at the time, Richard Shaw, who sadly passed away a few months ago, he said to me that I can see something inside you, Amo, that you're angry, you're frustrated. Something that whatever is bothering you is going to be of benefit to others. So I need to channel that anger and frustration so that it benefits other disabled people. And I'm so glad that he did that, because not only did he change my life and gave me an opportunity to better me and make this organization into something special, but he without realizing it, he provided a platform for so many other disabled people to do something similar in the locality. So we just need people with that vision, with that kind of thought process. No matter where we are in the world, disabled people need to provide that peer support, those peer opportunities, because it's very rare that non-disabled people do that for us. We need to take control. As I say, we need to take control of the conversation, the direction of our own destinies, to help others around us. So before we realize it, I've got now disabled people working for me who are doing much greater things than I'm doing, and they're probably going to do even more better things than I've ever done. And that's down to the vision of people, my predecessors, who provided me with that opportunity, and I've provided that opportunity to others, and hopefully that continues down generations. And as I say, sorry for keep repeating myself, we need to control the direction and the conversation so that we're providing that platform of opportunity for everyone around us. And disabled people need to be in leadership positions, work their way, not be granted it just for being disabled, but to work hard and take those leadership positions, and then provide an equal opportunity, a set of equal opportunities around them. To this day now, I mean, I've got, I think, around 60 staff, 60 paid staff, and I would say comfortably just more than half of them are disabled people, and the remaining are non-disabled people. And those non-disabled people are learning about something without realizing it. They're learning about the abilities of their peers, non-disabled peers. So when they leave and move on to other jobs, they will have better attitudes towards disability. And again, that is down to having organizations like mine, and they exist across the world in whatever format they exist. They do exist, and they just need to be able to provide that platform for others. So yeah, I think peer support, peer opportunities, I think that is something that cannot be underestimated.
Okay, so before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
Lottery numbers, I'll have them, please, if you don't mind. But no, I mean, thank you for this opportunity to sharing my thoughts. What I will ask is if people want to know more about my journey, it's there in the book, Walk Like a Man. It's available on Amazon, and it is hopefully inspiring other disabled people to talk about their feelings, and not just disabled people, non-disabled people as well. There's a big readership of non-disabled people as well. So just, as I say, keep talking to everybody. Well, that's the one thing I'll say. Keep talking and saying what's on your mind. Don't overdo it because you'll just annoy people, but do it to the extent where you're comfortable in saying, guess what's on my mind? Guess what's annoying me? Guess what's pissing me off? And before you realize it, you'll feel better. The people around you will feel more connected to you, and you'll just create a happy environment around you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Don't undermine your accomplishments too. You help a lot of people, and you help people that you'll directly never see, and they're out living their own life. So I mean, grateful to you. Like, you're doing more work than I'm doing. Like, I don't think I'm doing that much. But anyway, don't undermine your accomplishment. I see you. I think you're a great guest. I didn't think we would get along as well as we did, but I'm glad we talked and we had a really great conversation. So thank you so much, Amo, for giving me your time and expertise. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, and I'll catch everyone next time. Bye-bye.